Good evening. I'm Gabe Gutierrez in for Tom Llamas. We close out the week with that highly anticipated release of the Mar-a-Lago search affidavit. The heavily redacted pages revealing the Justice Department believed highly sensitive information was being held illegally at former President Trump's Florida home after a trove of classified documents were found inside boxes he turned over to the National Archive in January. Those documents labeled confidential, secret, and 25 were even considered top secret. However, many of the affidavit's pages entirely blacked out, the Department of Justice saying it's protecting information, such as names and methods used in the investigation. In a scathing statement, the former president called the redacted copy a, quote, public relations subterfuge. He has previously asked for the entire document to be made public. Let's get right to Peter Alexander at the White House, who also has President Biden's response to today's news.
Tonight, 3 weeks after that unprecedented FBI search of former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago home, new details why the Justice Department pushed to make that controversial move. The 38-page affidavit focuses on what the FBI says it found in 15 boxes Mr. Trump returned to the National Archives in January. Mixed in with newspapers, magazines, and presidential correspondence were 184 classified documents. 67 of them marked confidential, 92 marked secret, and 25 documents marked top secret, where the government says their unauthorized disclosure could result in exceptionally grave damage to the national security. Also discovered documents that contained information about clandestine human sources and Mr. Trump's handwritten notes. The affidavit reveals more about the timeline. In May of last year, the National Archives first requested the missing records from the former president. In January, Mr. Trump turned over those 15 boxes containing that classified information. A month later, the archive sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department. President Biden authorized the archives to reject any executive privilege claims by Mr. Trump over the documents, allowing the FBI to examine them. In June, Mr. Trump turned over additional documents. 2 months later, the Justice Department submitted that affidavit that a federal judge approved, granting the Mar-a-Lago search. In its filing, the FBI argued there's probable cause that more classified documents with national defense information were at Mr. Trump's residence, and there was probable cause to believe that evidence of obstruction will be found. But the affidavit with entire pages blacked out leaves many unanswered questions about the extraordinary search of a former president's home that sparked fierce blowback from Republicans and Mr. Trump, who today said the judge should never have allowed the break-in of my home, and slammed the redacted affidavit as a public relations subterfuge by the FBI and DOJ, after arguing he'd been turning over documents and that the investigation is politically motivated. Mr. Trump had demanded the entire affidavit be made public, but the judge allowed the Justice Department to make substantial redactions to protect its investigation, including any details about witnesses. Tonight, we pressed President Biden, who said he had no advance knowledge of the search.
Is it ever appropriate for a president to take home with them classified and top secret documents?
Depending on the circumstance. For example, I have in my home a cabined off space that is completely secure. It's locked. I have a person with me, military with me. I read it, I lock it back up and give it to the military.
And Peter Alexander joins us now from the White House. Peter, the FBI seized 11 sets of classified documents during that Mar-a-Lago search. So where do we go from here?
You know, Gabe, ultimately it's going to be up to the Justice Department and specifically to Attorney General Merrick Garland to determine whether anyone will be charged with a crime here. Meanwhile, a judge has given the former president, President Trump, until tonight to further explain his lawsuit, calling for a third party, what's known as a special master, to review all those documents. Gabe?
Peter Alexander, thank you. For a closer look at the affidavit released today and what it means for the former president, I want to bring in Barbara McQuaid. She's an NBC News legal analyst and former federal prosecutor, and NBC News justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. And Ken, to me, one of the most surprising revelations in all this is the fact that there wasn't just a single government informant. The Department of Justice, in fact, mentions a significant number of civilian witnesses whose names were redacted from this report, right?
That's right, Gabe. That was a notable line, and it really kind of refuted some of the earlier reporting suggesting there was one crucial informant. There may be some more important than others, but what this makes clear is that the FBI is talking to a number of people about this, and they will continue to talk to a number of witnesses because it's really important for them to establish how those documents got to Mar-a-Lago and what, if anything, was President Trump's role in putting them there and keeping them there, Gabe.
So, Barbara, if you're the former president and his team tonight reading this affidavit, what piece of this document is most concerning to you?
I think much of this was already known to President Trump and his team. You know, the duration of the dispute with the archives that I think tends to prove willfulness, the content of the documents. But I think the thing that is new is the thing that Ken was mentioning, this significant number of civilian witnesses. If you're Trump, I think you have to be worrying about who on my team is talking to the FBI. Are these people at Mar-a-Lago? I mean, somebody told the archives and the FBI that there were still documents there, that where they're being stored, the various locations. It says that they were being stored not just in the storage room, but also the 45 office, something called the Pine Hall, and the residential suite. Who knew that? So it seems like there are a lot of people on the inside who are talking with the FBI. That's why it was necessary to conceal their identities and redact a lot of this information. If I'm Trump, I'm looking over my shoulder and wondering who it is talking about me.
Yeah, some interesting nuggets there. And Ken, among the documents turned over in January were several handwritten notes from the former president. How significant could those notes be? And do we have any clue as to when they may have been written?
We don't, Gabe, and that's actually a crucial question. If Donald Trump put notations on highly classified documents after he was president, that would prove that he knew they were there in his residence where they shouldn't have been. And we're talking about some of the most highly classified documents in the government. Documents we learned today that reflect potentially CIA human sources and intercepts of foreign leader communications. Really, really highly classified stuff. But it's not clear from the context here whether they meant that President Trump wrote on these documents while he was still president, or whether he wrote on them after he left office. That's a crucial question, Gabe.
And Barbara, as a former federal prosecutor, and we want to be very clear here, with the information available right now, what charges would you potentially be considering for the former president?
Well, just based on what we know already, it seems that the Espionage Act is one whose elements are met. It makes it a crime for somebody to willfully retain information pertaining to the national defense after it's been requested outside of its proper storage space. That seems like just on all fours with the scenario that's going on now. That's a crime punishable by up to 10 years in prison. There's also a suggestion in the search warrant, one of the bases is that there is an obstruction of justice statute. We don't really know what that's about. That is all behind the redactions. It suggests to me that perhaps they were untruthful about what information they retained. And so I think more investigation would be necessary to try to shore up that part of it. There may be some defense. Maybe there's something that is exonerating to Donald Trump. But, boy, on its face, it sure looks like a violation of the Espionage Act here.
And, Ken, can you tell me any more about the investigation into how these documents got out of the White House in the first place and how the safeguards apparently failed?
Well, the first line of this affidavit says the FBI is investigating the improper removal of the documents. So it's pretty clear that they need to establish how those documents got out of the White House and what was Donald Trump's role, if any, in that phase of how they got to Mar-a-Lago, because one of his defenses may be, look, I'm a busy man. I didn't pack my own boxes, and he likely didn't pack his own boxes. But there are crucial witnesses, people who worked inside the White House, people whose job it was to police up the classified information, and people like Mark Meadows, the former chief of staff, who have important information, and the FBI, no doubt, is trying to get that information, Gabe.
Ken Delaney and Barbara McQuaid, thank you so much for joining Top Story. Now to the rocky day on Wall Street, the Dow plunging more than 1,000 points after Fed Chairman Jerome Powell warned Americans there may be some pain ahead to tame inflation.
Price stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve.
In his most closely watched speech of the year in Wyoming, today Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell signaled even more interest rate hikes may be on the way next month.
Restoring price stability will take some time and requires using our tools forcefully to bring demand and supply into better balance.
Since June, the Fed has already raised interest rates 0.75 of a percentage point twice. The moves meant to slow the economy and squelch inflation. but
they will also bring some pain to households and businesses.
the uncertainty fueling a sell-off on Wall Street. The Dow today down more than 1,000 points as consumers wonder what's next.
You really want to try to whittle down your credit card debt as much as possible because those rates are going to continue to go up.
In Arizona, potential home buyer Eric Burlingame had one thought when he heard mortgage rates might keep rising.
Oh,
he's been looking for a home around Phoenix for more than 2 years and is considering giving up.
it's definitely been a roller coaster. Find all the right houses, but they're just not in the right neighborhood.
In Cape Cod, Ben and Bill's Chocolate Emporium is feeling the heat too this summer. Inflation means the cost of dairy is skyrocketing, melting their profits. What are you most worried about?
Well, we have to pass that on to the consumer. We can't absorb all that, as a company.
And while consumers across the country are feeling the effects of inflation, new data out today from the Commerce Department showed that consumer spending cooled in July, going up just 0.1%. Now, I want to bring in Robin Farzad. He's a host of Public Radio's Full Disclosure. And Robin, does today's consumer spending data that I just mentioned mean inflation is in check?
No, paradoxically, I think consumer spending was subdued because prices fell at the pump. And you saw some marginal help and the self-fulfilling prophecy of people feeling a slowdown or the creep up in interest rates and more monitoring their payments and their credit card bills and everything ahead of maybe the Fed hiking. So spending was more subdued. Having said that, there's still so much depth to the amount of money in this economy. And it's an unenviable task for Jerome Powell to have to mop it up. I think many people don't realize how much the Fed has giveth and now must taketh away.
So we just reported that markets were clearly rattled today, the Dow down more than 1,000 points. Why did these comments spook the market so much? And had investors been optimistic that Powell would leave rate hikes alone in 2022 after so many increases already?
Yeah, for some reason, more and more traders for the past month have been romancing this idea that maybe the Fed will do just 50 basis points next time or telegraph some dovish language. But look, when you have an economy near full employment at about 3.5% unemployment, one of the Fed's mandates, versus prices at 8.5%, that is a yawning chasm, and that is a long way to hike. I mean, even if he does 75 basis points, the Fed next month, that only gets us back up to 3%. And is 3% enough on a short-term treasury to induce people to park their money in that, as opposed to spend it on cars and houses and travel and all of this FOMO spending that we're seeing in this economy?
So, of course, the Fed walking a fine line here, but has Powell, do you think, essentially given up on the possibility of a soft landing, that the Fed can right the economy without triggering some sort of recession?
There are only a couple of parallels to this. If you look at the Greenspan Fed in 1994, and it did engineer some sort of fixed income route and a bond market route. That's been forgotten. It's almost 30 years ago. And certainly in the early 80s with Paul Volcker, had to break the back of inflation by throwing the economy into a deep recession. I don't know of any other case study where you've had this much money out there. We've been talking a lot this week about PPP. That turns out to have been inflationary. There's still a lot of that PPP money out there that people are digging into, still a lot of travel, a lot of leisure spending. And the Fed increasingly is not going to be able to engineer a soft landing if it has to keep hiking by more than 50 basis points every time.
Robin Farzad, host of Public Radio's Full Disclosure. Thanks for joining Top Story. Next up, newly released video of a wild car chase in Florida. Officers pursuing a stolen box truck down highways and city streets full of traffic. Wad Venegas reports on the harrowing case.
Tonight, video showing a high-speed pursuit in Florida going from the interstate through the streets of Gainesville. Deputies joining the pursuit in support of Highway Patrol as the driver of the stolen box truck sped on the highway. The driver eventually making his way into busy streets, escaping law enforcement by driving the wrong way against upcoming traffic and driving over the median several times. The high center of gravity of the truck swaying and almost tipping over as it swerves. The box truck missing vehicles by inches and even pulling into a parking lot at one point after multiple failed pit maneuvers. The speeding truck even hitting patrol cars. The suspect finally gives up at the wheel, only to abruptly jump out of the driver's seat in a desperate attempt to get away, but he would quickly be surrounded by several patrol cars and agents forcing him to the ground. Video shows the moment he was arrested and placed in a patrol car, not before speaking to the arresting officers.
Ain't wrong, I ain't blaming the police. They just protecting the people.
In his arrest report, deputies alleged the driver, Brandon Baker, quote, demonstrated a wanton disregard for the safety of persons and property by his refusal to stop for marked patrol cars and driving, quote, in a reckless manner. Baker now faces a slew of charges, including grand theft of a vehicle, reckless driving, multiple hit and runs, aggravated fleeing, and aggravated battery on an officer. Efforts to reach a public defender representing him were unsuccessful. With the latest charges part of a long rap sheet for Baker, it's still unclear why he allegedly stole the box truck. He's now jailed without bond, and he won't be fleeing from police anytime soon.
And Guad Venegas joins us now from Miami. Guad, the video of this chase is just incredible. Was anyone injured?
Gabe, there are no reports of any serious injuries. In fact, authorities think it's a miracle that no one was seriously injured, especially when the driver was driving through all of these streets and crashing into some police vehicles. Authorities say that at least 7 of those patrol cars were damaged during the chase. They add that more charges could be brought on against the subject in the coming days. Gabe?
New fallout from Louisiana's trigger law banning most abortions. A mother pregnant with a fetus diagnosed with a fatal condition speaking out after she was denied abortion access. Stephanie Goss now on what the mother's demanding.
On the steps of the Louisiana State House today,
my name is Nancy Davis.
A pregnant woman told her story.
10 weeks into my pregnancy, I found out that my baby had a rare birth defect called a crania. The doctors told me that my baby would die shortly after birth.
Acrania is a rare congenital disorder which prevents a fetus's skull from forming inside the womb. Nancy Davis says her local hospital would not perform an abortion.
Basically, they said I had to carry my baby to bury my baby. They seemed confused about the law and afraid of what would happen to them.
While the near total ban is being challenged in court, Louisiana still has very strict abortion laws on the books. Doctors face possible prison time for breaking them. The hospital would not comment on the specific case, but says there has been much discussion over the interpretation of some of the new legislation regarding treatment for medically futile pregnancies. The hospital supports medical decisions made between a physician and their patient that comply with all state laws and policies. Some lawmakers who helped pass the current law say it does allow an abortion in this case.
This woman is seeking a medical procedure for a pregnancy that is not viable outside of the womb.
Can't the state fix it by just saying, okay, acrania is now one of the conditions that will be an exception?
They could add that on, but there's no possible way to make a comprehensive list of exceptions.
Davis is calling for a special session to clear up the law.
This is not fair to me, and it should not happen to any other woman.
Next week, she says, she's going out of the state for an abortion. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News.
Still ahead tonight, the hate crime investigation. A Texas woman caught on camera unleashing a racist attack on 2 women. The serious charges she's now facing. Plus, the new video showing a man stealing a car with a 2-year-old inside. The urgent search tonight for the suspect. And amusement park scare. A popular roller coaster at Six Flags malfunctioning, sending several people to the hospital. Why the park was fined over the same ride just last year. Stay with us. We're back now with a racist rant caught on camera. Texas police arresting a woman who was filmed hurling insults and attacking Indian American women near Dallas. The incident now being investigated as a hate crime. Here's Maggie Vespa.
In Plano, Texas, video of one woman's hate-filled rant gone viral.
Oh my God, guys, record. She's hitting me. She's hitting me.
In it, you see her appearing to hit and hurling racist slurs at 3 Indian American women.
Furry ass bitches. Go back to India. Why? We don't want want you here.
58-year-old Esmeralda Upton has been arrested and charged with assault and making terroristic threats, captured in a nearly 5.5-minute video shared on Facebook by one of the alleged victims, who said, "I have lived in Dallas-Fort Worth for 29 years, and never have I felt so humiliated, threatened, and scared for my life."
It's pretty shocking and disturbing.
Plano police saying the incident is now being investigated as a hate crime.
According to the Texas Hate Crime Act, if the crime is motivated by hate, by violence, by any form of prejudice, it can be investigated as a hate crime.
In the video, you can see Upton come up to the group of friends multiple times, shouting racist remarks.
Why did you walk up to us to talk to you? Because I hate you Indians, that's why. Everywhere I go, you Indians are everywhere.
One victim seen on camera calling the police.
She's a white woman wearing a black dress. No, I'm not white. I'm Mexican. She's Mexican. I'm Mexican, and I paid my way here.
Oh my After God, appearing to hit multiple women, Upton can be heard saying she wants to be, quote, civil.
I overstepped my bounds, and I'm sorry.
But the calm didn't last long.
I swear to God, I will break your camera. Stop!
There was physical violence in this, but rhetoric like that and how seriously it's handled, just kind of given where we are as a society right now.
It was taken very serious. The video was there for us, and we acted upon that less than 24 hours to take this individual into custody.
Since then, Upton is out of jail, posting $10,000 bond. Family or a lawyer for Upton could not be reached for comment.
We are happy that the Plano Police Department was looking into it, and they've made an arrest, and we believe that they will do a fair job.
Oh my God, guys, record. She's hitting me. She's hitting me. Oh my God.
And Maggie Vespa joins us now from Chicago. Maggie, stunning video. And as you said, it's gone viral. On the original post alone, 200,000 views in 2 days, and it's been reposted countless times. And police are getting hammered for waiting until the next day to arrest Upton, and they talked to you about that, right?
Gabe, exactly. The officer that we talked to really wanted to address this. The answer, he says, to that question they're getting on social media is that because there were no serious injuries, Upton is being charged with a misdemeanor assault. And in Texas, officers can't arrest someone for a misdemeanor they didn't witness without investigating, and this is key, getting a warrant first. So he says they did that, and they arrested her the next day. And he also stressed officers are very disturbed by this. And again, they're investigating it as a hate crime, which could lead to harsher penalties down the road. Gabe.
Maggie Vespa, thank you. When we come back, Moderna versus Pfizer. The new lawsuit alleging Pfizer stole research from Moderna that helped develop its COVID-19 vaccine. The details next. Back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the search for a suspect who stole a car with a sleeping toddler inside. New surveillance video from a Philadelphia gas station shows a woman walk away from her car to pay for gas. Moments later, a man in a black T-shirt gets inside the car and drives off. That toddler was later found unharmed in a nearby park. A popular roller coaster at Six Flags in New Jersey has been temporarily shut down after injuring more than a dozen riders. Inspectors were seen investigating El Toro earlier today. The 19-story roller coaster malfunctioned last night as the ride was ending. At least 14 people were hurt, including 5 were hospitalized. The same roller coaster was closed last year after the rear wheels of a car lifted off the tracks during a ride. Next to a string of bomb threats targeting Howard University. Students were evacuated from the school's East and West Tower dorms overnight. Nothing was found, but it's the second time the school was evacuated in the last 2 days and the 8th bomb threat there this year. The FBI is investigating dozens of similar threats at historically black colleges and universities across the country. And Moderna is suing Pfizer and its German BioNTech over its German arm BioNTech over its COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer is alleging Moderna copied patented mRNA technology between 2010 and 2016. That technology later used to develop COVID vaccines. A spokesperson for Pfizer said the company will vigorously defend itself against the allegations. And we turn now to a major headline out of Silicon Valley tonight. T-Mobile is teaming up with Elon Musk and SpaceX to eliminate so-called dead zones in remote parts of the U.S. The partnership connecting the company's Starlink satellites to mobile phones in areas where service is spotty. Musk even saying the service would work during hurricanes and natural disasters. So for more on the announcement, I want to bring in Roger Cheng. He's the executive editor at CNET. And Roger, Elon Musk is known for flashy announcements that may get a lot of media attention, but don't always follow through, of course, like his deal to acquire Twitter. And Jeff Bezos, Musk's rival in the satellite space race, has also done something similar last year, signing a pact with Verizon to expand rural broadband access. So is ending dead zones really a possibility, or is this just another publicity stunt from someone who wants to one-up his rival?
Well, I do think that there's some element of reality to this. Keep in mind that his Starlink company now does deliver home internet service. It works in select areas. So it's really the same principle. You're beaming down signals to basically augment or complement the cell radios that T-Mobile uses. And so theoretically, that'll boost service. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this isn't going to happen until at least the end of next year. So there's still a lot of time for them to kind of work out the kinks. And at least initially, this is really only going to be helping with text messages, messaging services, really low data aspects. So it's not like you can go and just stream YouTube videos or play video games anywhere. They're starting with some baby steps. So it's why I think there's some reality, there's some reason to be hopeful that this is a legit service that may come out in the coming year or two.
All right, in the coming year or two. So this is designed, though, for areas without any service at all. But, you know, look, we have spots right here in the 30 Rock where sometimes you just lose service. And I'm sure viewers have places where they can't get service in some of their homes. Is there the possibility that this is expanded beyond just remote areas and can boost signals everywhere?
Oh, yeah, T-Mobile CEO Mike Sievert says that anywhere where you essentially can see the sky, you should be able to get coverage. So if you're inside 30 Rock, for instance, you might still be out of luck. And I know for a lot of folks who have poor coverage in homes, that still might be an issue. This is really about being outside, being in remote areas. You mentioned the idea of hurricanes. So areas where during emergencies, cell towers, for instance, get knocked down, they can use this service as sort of a backup for emergency reasons, for disasters. And so I think less right now, at least as it is, think about it less as a alternative route to like your normal phone experience. This is really more for emergency or one-off type situations.
Roger Cheng, thanks so much. Turning now to money talks, what consumers and investors need to know from the business world and beyond. Rising food prices and labor shortages are hitting students hard, with many cafeterias unable to afford the meals students have come to expect. One school district we spoke to says the food costs to make a meal are up a staggering 80% since 2018. Priscilla Thompson has the story.
School lunches, we can all remember those. But today, some kitchens look more like this one at Churchill High School in San Antonio, Texas. Except with inflation rising and crippling staff shortages, this school year, those fresh fruits and vegetables, among other items, are on the chopping block.
Strawberries may have tripled in price, and so we are not able to offer the strawberries.
Everything is harder to find, School Nutrition Director Sharon Glosson says. When they do, it often costs more, and they may not have the staff to serve it.
We would generally have 7 serving lines open. We've gone down to 4 serving lines with only 2 menu choices daily.
They say improvise with what you have, you know, so and just make it look good and taste good, and they will take it.
School meals are often the healthiest students eat all day, a study shows. But as rising food costs are being felt in lunchrooms coast to coast, some districts are substituting frozen and processed foods for what was once fresh. Like Connie Daubels, Food and Nutrition Services Director for Davenport Community Schools in Iowa.
We can't get the taquitos. We can't get pancakes. We can't get French toast sticks. We can't get omelets. We can't get some of the beverages that we would like. And in our particular school district, we had to change bread providers. So we are not going to be able to have the same breads that we had last year.
The district is paying nearly double for bread this year, and the buns are smaller.
The students will notice that this year.
Back in San Antonio, those limited options and substitutions aren't going unnoticed either.
Yeah, strawberry milk, pink milk. They don't do that every day. You know, that used to be my favorite.
The quality has changed a little bit and the proportions have been cut down a little smaller.
There's only 3 of 7 lines that are open.
With the federal waiver that allowed all students to eat lunch for free during the pandemic gone and all the menu changes, parents like Genevieve Sagowski considering having her 2 students pack lunch this year.
We are already spending $280 a week on groceries. If the food changes to where it's not exactly what they want at school, we'll figure out a way for them to eat what they have at home.
A food fight like no other, with no end in sight. Priscilla Thompson, NBC News, San Antonio, Texas.
For Tom Llamas, I'm Gabe Gutierrez in New York. Stay right there. More news is on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.